This is Pop Culture Makes Me Jealous, where we analyze pop culture through the lens of race or gender, and sometimes both. And also sometimes we just talk about pop culture properties we love. And today's show is going to be kind of like that. I'm your host, Julia Washington, and if you're new around here, I'm a writer, artist, and podcast host based in California. When I'm not hosting this show, I'm facilitating the Jelly Pops Book Club, pouring candles, or painting greeting cards. In this episode, I'm joined by Mario Mello, aka Movies with Mr. Mario on Instagram, to discuss the 1989 classic Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids released on June 23rd, 1989, and it stars Rick Moranis, Marcia Strassman, Thomas Brown, and Amy O'Neill, just to name a few. Mario Mello, welcome back to the show.
Welcome. Thank you. I'm so excited.
Nobody can see you smile. We can't radiate smiling through the airwaves.
I have a big smile because I always love talking to you and we have really good discussions. So it's always a pleasure to be here.
I'm so glad. And I love it when you're on. You're literally like one of the only guys that we have on the show. And it's not like a sexism thing. It's just that, you know, you're more thoughtful about what you review. And sometimes that's not always the case with some people. And I don't really want to talk to people who are going to tell me I'm wrong. So we are gathered here today to discuss the 1989 classic, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. This movie stars Rick Moranis, Marcia Strassman, R.I.P., and so many others. So you know I like to go to the Google because everybody Googles, and we like to see what Google has to say before we make decisions. Here's what Google said. When kids sneak into inventor Wayne Selinsky's upstairs lab to retrieve an errant baseball, his experimental shrink ray miniaturizes them. When Selinsky returns home, he destroys the device, which he thinks is a failure, and dumps it in the trash, throwing it out along with the kids. The four children, now a quarter-inch tall, must survive the journey back to the house through a yard where sprinklers bring treacherous storms and garden variety ant stampedes like elephants. I think this is the most accurate Google summary I've ever read about a movie.
Yeah. It makes it sound so epic.
It does make it
They got a journey back to the house.
It was a treacherous journey.
Yes.
It was a difficult journey. So the movie opens with the daughter on the phone with a friend. She's it's 1989, so she's talking on a wall phone. She's corded up. She's talking about her parents' marital troubles. Her brother's working on an experiment, and dad's upstairs working on his shrinking machine. And then next door, we see the family that has two sons, and they're getting ready to go camping. And that family dynamic is so different from the Selinskys that we have several instances where each a member of the family looks at the neighboring family and thinks, oh my God, they're so weird.
Yeah.
The teenage daughter and the eldest teenage son of the other family are similarly aged, and we learn that they go to high school together. And so that phone call that the daughter is on really does kind of set the tone for like, we've got family drama. But it's very still kind of innocent, I feel like, because dad's trying real hard to be a successful inventor, mom's a realtor, and everything just didn't turn out the way that you think it would when you're 40 something with kids, which is literally what I'm experiencing in life right now. Rude. So Mario, I need to know, how old were you when you first saw this movie?
So the movie came out when I was 3 years old, so I would assume I was, probably 7 or 8 by the time I actually saw it, because I remember the second one had just come out, and I think that was in 1991.
Was that the Honey, I Blew Up the Kids? Oh, no, that's Honey, I Shrunk.
Yeah,
We Shrunk Ourselves.
No, that's the third one.
Okay.
This is the one where they blow up the toddler, and the toddler's giant.
Yeah.
In Vegas.
Yeah.
So I must have been like 6 or 7 because I remember watching them both.
Like back to back or something?
Yeah, back to back or something like that. But yeah, I was around that age. And I remember as a kid, I thought it was the most entertaining and most awesomest thing ever. And I was like, oh man, these movie effects, how did they do that? Kind of thing.
Right.
I was like, this blows my mind. It's so real. It
It's
could really
so
happen.
good. Like this movie's like, oh my god, like the ants like freaked me out so bad when I was a kid. Like I did
Really?
not, yeah, I didn't like how they were like kind of furry and like it just, and then like I don't know, I have auditory issues, so that also could be part of it because I felt like I could hear the way the ants felt
Mm,
in terms of the way that like when they touch them.
mm.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just
See,
a
I always like
weirdo.
the ant because it was a cool little pet ant, and I was like, I want an ant. I was more scared of the scorpion because I was like, oh, that's creepy, and he had all his
The
little
scorpion
fangs.
was really creepy. I was not a fan of the scorpion at all. We watched this movie for family film night. I literally have no idea how old I was when we first saw it because family film night was a pretty regular thing in our house.
Mhm.
Did we do it monthly? I don't remember. It's like a lot of memories that I have. But and I just, because my dad did my dad like Rick Moranis? I don't even know anymore. But like we watched a lot of movies that had Rick Moranis in them. I feel
Yeah,
like
he was like an '80s star, and it
he
was funny because
really was.
I was looking at the date. He had 3 movies that year. He had Ghostbusters 2, this movie, and then Parenthood. So I was like,
Oh,
oh,
Parenthood. I was not allowed to watch
mhm.
Parenthood.
I wasn't either, but I was looking at his filmography and I was like, dang, he had 3 movies that year. Did a
That's a
lot of Rick
lot.
Moranis.
Yeah. I guess nowadays it doesn't feel like a lot for some people because movies are just being churned out left and right.
Yeah,
But with considering 1989, that's a lot for 1 year, I think, in my humble opinion. And
yes.
you already said that you loved it, right? Is that what you
I
said?
as a kid, yeah, I liked it.
Yeah.
I noticed more and more every time I watch it. It's one of those, like or things I didn't understand, I guess, as a kid. And then
Yeah.
like even this last time I watched it a few weeks ago, I was like, oh, like I guess the marital problems I like didn't really like understand fully. Like, oh wait, she's not living at the house. She's with her mom. Like she's staying with her mom. She's not there. She's like she left the house for a while. Like I didn't really
Yeah.
get that. I was like, oh, so like the little things that and even though like I knew like in my back of my mind like oh they're having trouble in their marriage, but I always just thought she left early for work or something. And then when I really
Yeah.
actually understand what the kids are saying and stuff, was like, oh yeah, she's not living with them anymore,
You know what?
or she's taking a break.
Yeah, I also didn't realize that they weren't together anymore until watching it this viewing. Isn't that interesting what you pick up on when you're a kid compared to when you're an adult? Like this
Yeah,
time to me, it was very clear that the daughter was saying, like, yeah, my dad and mom, whatever it was that she was saying. Like this time it was very clear to me. But in viewings past, it's like, all I heard was she was upset that she was trying to finish all this shit so she could go to the mall. Like she had to get to the mall. She needed to get to the mall. The mall is the most important thing in the world to her.
yeah,
And that still kind of came across, in the movie because that's literally her story. Poor thing. But I never really, and even in the wrap up when they're like, you guys are okay now? And they're like, yeah, we're good.
that 2 days was just brought them back together.
Yeah, the harrowing 2 days when they were trying not to have their children consumed by the elements of the backyard being a quarter-inch tall.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's Disney magic for you.
Oh, isn't it though? Good old Disney. I could use a little Disney magic in my life right
Right?
now. Come on, Disney. Anyway, Roger Ebert, the movie critic that everyone
Oh,
clung to for
R.I.P.
his opinions. Yes, RIP. But he had this to say. Quote, I've been trying to figure out exactly what's missing in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. The special effects are there, nicely in place, and the production values are sound. But the movie is dead in the water. It tells an amazing and preposterous story, and it seems bored by it. It uses the same sorts of visual effects we remember from The Incredible Shrinking Man, but it lacks the same sense of fun. End quote. So he gave this film 2 stars.
Out of 5? Was it out of 5 or 4?
5.
Oh,
And
okay.
it's the 80s, so everyone's clinging on what Roger Ebert has to say, because like it's
Yeah.
he's the guy since like the 70s. He was the guy, maybe even the 60s, I don't know. I think his career started in the 60s because I think he won his Pulitzer in the 70s.
Okay.
But overall, as a film critic, what do you think of this movie now?
I still think it's fun. I mean, I don't know, maybe because I grew up with it, I guess, because I saw it as a kid. Obviously, these people are seeing it as an adult, and then they're still, so I don't know. For me, it was always fun. It was on a regular watch, um, and we and I've talked about this before. I grew up in a conservative house, so like we were limited on what we could watch, but this was one that made the pass, and so things
Same.
that made the pass were on repeat because
Mm-hmm.
we couldn't watch everything. So I refer back to like things like this. So um, I just remember for me it was fun because it's like, ooh, I know it's dangerous, but I want to be shrunk and I want to go see all this stuff, and like it's such an adventure. And I don't know, I've always liked movies where kids are the antagonists and they have adventures. And that kind of
I
goes
did.
back to like the Goonies, the
Yeah.
Sandlot, like things like that. It's like those movies are always fun to me. I think because I grew up in that time, I
Yeah.
always wanted an adventure like that too. So I think it just when I still watched it like 2 weeks ago, I still was like, oh, this is still a fun movie. Like it just made me remember like all the good times I had watching it, I guess. So
Yeah, yeah. I totally relate to that because like you also grew up in a conservative home. Any movie that I mean, we were probably a little bit, my dad was probably a little bit more liberal than my mom in about what we could watch because he was a movie TV guy. Like I
mm,
remember she would complain about how when they were like dating and stuff, like their dating life centered around what was going to be on TV because we're talking the 60s. So
yeah.
like you can't record shit in the 60s. Like nothing
If you
was
miss it, you miss it.
you missed it, you missed it. And I just also remember it being fun. And then watching it this time, I was like, you know what? It doesn't matter. This movie isn't for me. This movie is for kids. This movie is for
Mhm.
parents with kids to do something together and to be in my opinion, I understand what Roger Ebert's doing, but to compare it
Mhm.
to The Incredible Shrinking Man doesn't feel fair. I mean,
Yeah.
like the visual effects, sure, but if you're walking into this film looking for the quality in terms of like storytelling, and not even storytelling, but just like this is a kids movie. This is a family film.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
to be like, oh, it gets 2 stars, but it's lacking, it lacks, fun. And I'm just like, lacks fun for who? Because it was fun for me.
It was fun for me.
And even now, and I do wonder though if it's one of those films that if you see it for the first time in adulthood, because when my sister was married to her now ex-husband, he had never seen Goonies before. And the guy was like not into it. And my sister was like, what? Like this movie's amazing. And no, it was Princess Bride. It was The Princess Bride. Her ex-husband had never seen The Princess Bride. And when she showed it, and that was a movie that was on loop in our house, like
Mm.
big time. And so then we had this and we were like, have you never seen that? He was like, it was okay. I don't know, blah, blah. And then it turned into this, well, maybe it's because he's actually not a fun person at all. He likes to watch one specific, he'll watch all movies, but there's one specific type of movie that he'll put on repeat. He's not a rom-com guy. But it makes me wonder if this type of movie, these movies that we grew up with, are only we in adulthood, if we feel like they're only good because there's a nostalgia factor to it too.
That makes sense.
Which leads me to, if you were to watch it now for the first time ever, do you think you would like it?
As is, like where it is, what it is, as it is, the effects, I'd be like, okay, the effects are kind of cheesy.
They were supposed to be
But then I'd be
for
like, oh wait, this was made in
1989.
the 80s.
Yeah.
I mean, that was good for 1989. But
Yeah.
like, if I saw, I think I'd probably say, oh, it's cute. But I think, yeah, I agree. I think it was more of this nostalgia factor and
Mm-hmm.
growing up with it and stuff like that. And I think it just sticks with you.
Yeah.
But
Could you relate to any of the kids? Like, did you feel like you saw yourself in any of the kids? Because there's 4 total for people who are listening who haven't seen it. You've got the daughter, she's the eldest of the Solinsky
yeah,
kids.
Amy, Nick, Slinsky,
Mm-hmm.
and then you got Russ, who's the oldest son of the neighbors, and then Ron, who's the younger brother. I always liked Russ the best.
Mm-hmm.
Out of the characters, I think I probably related to him because, like, I wasn't a sports guy. Like my parents were like, "Oh, you play some sport." I'm like, I'm not into sports, and I think he had that problem too. Is like he didn't want to play football. He quit the team. He didn't want to do it. And Dad even asks him in the movie, like, "Well, what's your thing?" And he was like, "I don't know, but when I figure it out, I'll let you know." And I feel like I had a hard time growing up. When I grew up, like I didn't know what my thing was. Like
Yeah.
I didn't feel like I fit into one category. Or, I was good at a lot of things, but not necessarily
Yeah.
wanting to do them. So I don't know. I always felt like I could relate to him. You know,
Yeah.
he was always my favorite.
Well, and he's kind of a hero in the movie too, because at one point when they're traveling back, they come across a quote river, but it's not, it's a river to them because they're so small. It's just this little stream of water, and Amy falls into it and she's like essentially drowning, and he goes in after her and then like, he does the air portion of CPR, which we don't even do anymore. And like we know now that chest compressions is what matters, but
Yeah.
he totally saves her life. And I like his character too, because his dad's so brash and so rough and just kind of like this time around I was rolling my eyes so much at the dad where it's just like, oh, okay, like, just gotta stop talking.
It's funny because actually this time around, and that brings up a good point. It's actually a really good story about fathers and sons
Mm-hmm.
because both dads weren't really acknowledging their sons.
Yeah.
Like in the beginning, Wayne Skalinsky is like he's trying to focus on his project, and his son's like, "Oh look, Dad, I made a similar project, it's a science experiment, all this stuff." He's like, "Oh, that's cool," kind of thing. Like he kind of
Mm-hmm.
brushes it off. Like even though like his kid's just almost as smart as him,
Yeah.
like he still brushes them off.
If not
And
smarter,
then
because he realizes what to do to fix the machine.
exactly. And then the other dad is like, you're gonna play football. You're the man's man. You need to do this. You need to lift weights. Like, and not really acknowledging his son's feelings, like his son doesn't want to do that. Like,
Yeah.
no, you're gonna do it. When I was younger, my dad did this, and I think it was just that was a reflection on his childhood too, kind of thing. But then I noticed, like, by the end of the movie, they all understand I need to listen to my kid,
Yeah.
and they're all better at the end because I love you no matter what you do, kind of thing. So I really got that this last time I watched it
Mm-hmm.
was like that father son story, which is always a good thing to see. And we don't get a lot of that anymore. So
I agree, because it is still kind of, there's still sort of this, and we've talked about this before. It's just so nice to see like Disney magic, the dad, the man's man dad changes by the end of the movie. But it is really nice to see that, a parent says to a child, like, hey, because I think he does fully apologize. Like, hey, I'm
yeah.
really sorry that like I wasn't, not necessarily listening to you, but he essentially apologizes to
Hmm.
his eldest son about like putting him in that position. And from now on, things are going to be different. And you don't see that. There was like a chunk of time where we just had parents being like, grr, do say me, boss, you child. And
Hmm.
then we had a period of time where you do see these really like interesting relationships between parents and kids. And now I don't really know where that lands, because like it's so, parenting now is so interesting for me to watch, because all of my friends had kids 10 years after I did. So the change in parent, like I don't feel like a peer to my peers when it comes to
Hmm.
parenting. It is really refreshing to see in a kid centric film
Hmm.
this dad who kind of comes off gruff and rough. And, he just kind of made me not uncomfortable, but it was just like, dude, come on, like get out of your head, look around. And the wife kind of calls him out a couple of times too, to
Hmm.
actually come around and be like, hey, kid, I now see you and I'm sorry I didn't before. And so we're going to move on from that and be better. And that's just
Mhm.
nice. It's just nice to be validated by your parents like that.
Yeah, I agree.
Um,
It was
I
good.
I have to tell you, Mario, I thought Russ was so dreamy up until
Ah,
about like 5 years ago. Because when I was a little kid, it was like, look at his feathered hair. Oh my God. And he saves her. Oh my
mhm.
God. And he's so considerate. He's letting her sleep in the Lego. Like, oh my God.
Aw,
And the little brother irritated the shit out of me. Not the
yeah,
Zelensky kid, the other one.
yeah, Ron.
Ron was like every guy I went to elementary and junior high with. So it was like, I've had enough of you, Ron. There
He
are
was,
6 of
he
you
took after the
currently in my.
dad. He was very
Yes,
like the dad.
he was exactly like the dad. And I think that actually goes back to your point too about the father and son story, because he so much wants to be in a relationship with his dad that he's willing to be exactly like him.
Yeah, and he has the type to change your heart towards the end too. Like,
Yeah.
so everyone gets healing at the end.
Everyone is affected by Disney magic.
Yes, classic Disney.
You've heard me mention that I am now a contributor to Jennifer Magazine, so I want to tell you a little bit about the publication. Jennifer Magazine supports a strong community of women and non-binary people who are challenging the status quo of ageism, choosing conscious consumption over status seeking, supporting brands that align with their values of inclusion, stepping into the empowerment found in self-expression, and talking about it. If you're tired of reading publications that seem to miss the mark when it comes to coverage of women, aging, and the gender binary, publications that are rooted in internalized racism and misogyny, then Jennifer Magazine is the publication for you. The publisher of Jennifer Magazine was once told that there's concern that Jennifer Magazine misses the mark, that it's not something people are asking for. And you know what? It's hard to ask for something when you don't know that something has been missing from your life. You can read Jennifer Magazine at jennifermag.com. There you can purchase monthly issues or even join their annual subscription and receive exclusive discounts. Do you get really excited that your favorite book was adapted for screen, only to watch it and feel completely let down? Are you a person who refuses to watch the screen adaptation because you know the movie gods got it wrong? I'm Julia Washington, host of Jelly Pop's Book Club, where we read book-to-screen adaptations and compare them to their screen counterparts. We've covered books like Normal People by Sally Rooney, Water for Elephants, and Are You There, God? It's me, Margaret. We even host a live monthly book club where we have read books like The Other Black Girl, The Joy Luck Club, and The Sun is Also a Star. Sometimes we even discuss books we wish would be adapted, offer suggestions on what needs to stay, and who should be cast. So if you're someone who thinks, I can't believe they did this to this book, or screams at a screen about the changes that make no sense at all, then this might be the show for you. You can find Jelly Pop's Book Club on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or visit our website, popculturemakesmejealous.com.
So, do you know this movie supposedly take place in Fresno? Did you notice that?
What?
Yeah. So I was reading like the trivia. Like I always read the IMDb stuff,
Yeah.
but it technically is supposed to take place in Fresno because in the second movie, Wayne Szalinski is talking to somebody. They're like, "Oh, where you're from?" He's like, "Oh, we're originally from Fresno, which is from 3.5 hours north of LA."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, okay." And then in this movie, the first one, they're talking about going to Bass Lake, which is about a 30-minute, 40-minute drive
Yeah,
from Fresno.
that's
And I
right.
was like, "Oh, so technically it's supposed to be Fresno." But it's funny because I guess in one of the scenes, when the mom's at the mall, it says Beverly Hills um, Mall or something because they shot it down there. Obviously,
Yeah.
it's one of those mistakes they put in there.
A little goof.
But yeah,
Yeah.
so but the movie supposedly takes place in Fresno, and I thought that was very interesting.
Why does everything happen in Fresno?
I don't
Is that the quintessential Central Valley city?
Maybe. Another funny trivia that I read was, I guess Chevy Chase and John Candy were actually going to be Wayne Scalinski before Rick Moranis got it, and then they both did not. They both decided not to do it, and then I guess Martin Short was actually got the role, but then he dropped out due to scheduling, and then John Candy recommended Rick Moranis, and so Rick Moranis got the job.
Oh, I
I was like,
can't.
oh, that's kind of cool.
That is cool,
I
but I
can't see
can't.
anybody else play it.
Yes, exactly. Because it's such a great role for Rick Moranis. Like, he looks like the guy who would be working on inventions that don't work properly. Like, I couldn't even imagine Chevy Chase doing that. And I like that he's like, you know, a shorter guy married to a taller woman. Like, I like
Mhm.
that dynamic too between the two of them, because I think it's a really great contrast between his family and the family next door, where you have the tall, masculine presenting dude and his very, you know, polite, put together wife. Because Mrs. Zelinsky is a beautiful woman and she's, you know, modern, but the neighbor wife is like full on. That woman had curlers in her hair the night before, full face of makeup, perfectly coiffed outfit to go to the lake, like a perfectly curated lake outfit. And so having the two differences visually, I think really does add to the story as well.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the style of the filmmaking. Movies don't do this anymore, because when the cartoons before, like for the opening credits. And when I was reading Roger Ebert's review, he even said that before the film started, they had like a Roger Rabbit
They did, yeah.
type movie in front. And I was like, I remember that. So I wonder if it was also on the VHS that they released after.
It was. I had it. I remember because I owned that movie.
Yeah,
and I
we
remember
did
watching it all
too.
the time.
Yeah. So, like, let's talk about the filmmaking of this movie, the filmmaking of it all.
Because, well, it was funny because Roger Rabbit came out the year before.
Yes.
So then they were trying to keep him relevant.
Mm-hmm.
And Pixar kind of does that with the little shorts in front of their movies. You know?
Which I think it was so great that they brought that back, because it was comforting.
Yeah. I always liked them, and then I would always hear somebody, another movie? Like this is longer than we're supposed to be here. I'm like,
I just feel like those people don't really love going to the movies. They just go to see a movie. Like, they're not there for the movie going experience.
Yeah, and it was good because now Disney has them all, the shorts all on Disney Plus. You can just watch them. Which they don't have the Roger Rabbit, and I'm surprised they don't have that. Like the little shorts of Roger Rabbit.
But just generally, like, because you review movies, you watch a lot of movies, you watch way more movies than I do. You have a more varied interest of genres, because we all know I will not watch anything horror related.
It's cool, and I like it's a lot of practical effects too, even though there is a lot of CGI. And it's funny because whenever I see a movie, I like to kind of read behind the scenes and how they did stuff too, just to kind of see how much work. And they were saying that a lot of their sets were built to size, like they built a lot of that stuff. And like the Cheerio scene, like when he's in the Cheerio bowl, like they filled it with water, but they put like this cream stuff in it to make it look like milk. And then the giant Cheerios are truck rubber tire type things, and they foamed it. They put foam all around it to make it look like Cheerios. And I was like, see, that's really cool. Like,
that is cool.
You never really think about it, like how much work is put into these things. So
because the Cheerios look realistic, like you would never think that they weren't Cheerios.
Yeah,
I think they did a really good job just generally with all of the set design.
Even with the cookie, I remember when I was a kid, I was like, I want to eat that cookie. Like, even though I could go to the store and get it, but it's like, for some reason, that cookie looks so delicious.
Yeah. Even with the Lego, because when it gets to be nighttime and they have to like stop walking and they like find a Lego to like hide into, like it looks exactly like a Lego did in 1989. They did it's just so like the attention to detail, I think is there. Like, I know a lot of criticism right now happening is like, oh, the quality is going down and all these things, but it's like, I don't know enough about the behind the scenes industry about quality, but I do know that like cartoons nowadays or like movies with special effects, like it used to be really easy to tell when somebody was on a green screen, right?
Yeah,
And now it's it's like not always that easy to tell.
I agree.
It's like no one can hear you nod
So
your head, Mario.
yeah, I know. I was right. I just get into our conversation.
I
So
know.
But no, and even like just the way they put the camera to make it look small. So like when they're looking up, like you see it from their point of view, like how big something is, or like
Yeah.
how small something is, or so just those little tricks of the camera and stuff like that too are always fun. So
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about Roger Ebert's review. It's clear that while the world validated his criticism with the Pulitzer Prize, like I think he got that, I think it was in the 70s. He has a very specific lens and doesn't always look for a movie for being just a fun family good time. He gave this movie 2 stars, like I mentioned earlier. And okay, yes, it has a 78% Rotten Tomato score, but this was the end of the 1980s.
is that the critics? Or is that the audience? Because
The
audience,
critics, the audience score I didn't look at. Should I start looking at the audience score?
I always like to just because I feel like
I don't think
there's
the
a big
audience score was
difference.
higher. I
So
don't-
well, yeah, and I always wonder because I mean we're dealing with that with like the Mario movie. Like critics have it at
really?
like a 50%, but like audience scores like a 98%. So it's like I
Oh,
always
isn't
like to
that
look and see.
that's so interesting. I mean, it
Oh
makes
yeah,
sense.
so audience score is 54%, which
Yeah,
is interesting.
much lower.
Interesting,
But this is the decade that brought us some seriously insane movies. Like, this is the
right?
decade of the Goonies. This is the decade of Ghostbusters. This is the decade of Back to the Future. Like, this is the decade where they really leaned into doing wild and crazy things. The Labyrinth, like this is the decade that's like, hey, we're just gonna go for it and see what happens.
See, and it's funny because I'm reading some of the reviews and they're like, since I didn't grow up with this movie or didn't see the ride or the show, I don't have any special connection to this movie, so it's kind of boring to me. So I'm wondering if it's one of those movies where it is a nostalgia thing, like
Yeah. You got to
which
start
makes
them young.
sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I mean, I could definitely see why people don't like it, but
So I was originally going to ask you if you were going to review this film today, what would you say? But I think I want to change that. I want to ask you because rebooting is a big deal. And I don't actually think rebooting is going
mhm.
to go away because now we've got, more than half a century of television out there. So, and film, I mean, the film industry is over 100 years old. So if this film were to be rebooted and remade for a modern audience, like what changes do you think they would make?
The families would be more diverse. I
Mm-hmm.
would hope that like I could see like a African American family or Latino family in one of the families.
Especially in Fresno.
Well, yeah, if it was in Fresno, it would take place in Fresno. It would take place in like New York or LA or
Yeah.
I don't know, somewhere where there's a lot of probably New
Like,
York. I
how are
could see
you
it in
going
New
to make
York.
a movie in Fresno and not put some Latino people in this movie? Like, come on. Sorry.
Um, obviously, the effects would be which. So now that I think about this, I there's a lot of danger in this movie, and I'm like, nobody dies. Like, there's several things that happen that I'm like, they would have probably died. Like,
Yeah.
they get thrown around. Like the two guys fall off the bee and they like fall from a pretty good height. Like
Yeah.
any type of fall like that, you'd be like broken arm or they just
Yeah.
get right back up. And it's like, so I feel like a movie that would be made today would need some of those consequences, whether it's like I broke my ankle or I broke my
Yeah.
arm or like we got to carry him now because he's severely injured, like
Like
things
in
like that.
Beef,
Yeah, exactly.
which go back and listen to our Beef episode, everybody. It was a real good chat. But you're right, though. And I do like the idea of maybe flipping it a little bit, right? So, like, maybe you have a well kept husband and a busy wife as the next door neighbors.
Hmm.
Um, who are into camp. I mean, I still feel like you need to I still feel like the camping element for that family needs to stay, like, because it's such a it's so different from families. Like, there's camping families and then there's families that don't camp. And I feel like that's a really big thing. Like, that's a good dichotomy.
Yeah. I don't know if they could do the backyard again because I feel like nobody
Do they
goes to
even
the
build
backyard.
houses with backyards anymore?
Yeah. So it'd be like I don't know, an apartment complex or maybe a lab or
Yeah.
something like that. But I mean, of course, you'd have to make new dangers. So it'd be like a rat or like
Right.
a
That
spider.
lawnmower scene when the kid comes back to mow the lawn the next day. I remember being so scared that they were going to get sucked up into, and then when they do kind of get sucked up and nothing happens to them. They just get shot out.
See, they get flown across like the yard.
Yeah.
And they're fine.
Yeah. I was like,
but then I also, me, like, as a horror movie fan, I'm like, oh man, what happens if they really did get chopped up? Like, or what if the guy really got eaten? Like, he ate his son, like, just little things like that. I'm like, I don't know.
I think somebody should write it. I think someone should do a modern day version and see what the imagination does. Keep the core of the concept.
Yeah, it would be a Disney Plus original. It would be like you know how they did the Cheaper by the Dozen remake. It'd be just like that. It'd be like one of those big movie premieres.
Not this. In my mind, the Cheaper by the Dozen remake is the Steve Martin, Bonnie Hunt.
No, the one with Gabrielle Union and Zach Braff.
I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah, they remade it. It came out for Disney Plus.
Okay,
it was straight to Disney Plus.
I don't.
It was a good movie.
Okay, I'll have to watch it because I don't go on Disney Plus just to like browse things to watch like I do with like Hulu and Netflix and like HBO Max.
You follow Disney Plus on Instagram and they always promote the movies that are coming out.
I thought I did, but you know what the problem with Meta is if you don't engage with someone's content, they'll be like, oh, so we think that you don't actually want to see their stuff, so we won't show it to you anymore. And that irritates me because it's like, no, if you don't show it to me, I can't engage with it. Come on.
Yeah. It's been a minute I think it came out like 2021, like the summer or something.
Oh.
So it's been a while. Or
Okay.
2022. Yeah, I think it was 2022.
Okay. That's the other hurdle too, is I no longer have a child in my house. So some of the kiddie movies I miss.
So you don't watch The Mandalorian, Julia?
Oh, I don't know any children that watch that show. I only know grown ass people. Is that a kid show?
That's what I'm saying. Why don't you? No, but why don't you watch it? Because it's so good.
I don't do Star Wars.
You're from Modesto. How do you not do Star Wars?
Because I'm from Modesto and everybody does Star Wars. Ask me.
How many times have you been asked that question?
They wanted. Did I tell you this already? I tell this story to everybody, so people are probably tired of hearing it. The city wanted to paint the water tower, the Death Star. And Disney
gosh.
Disney said no. And I was like, thank you, Disney. Stop. Like, these people are delusional here. And I'm going to get jumped and robbed and mugged because of the way I'm speaking of my city. But the inundation, the weekend, if May 4th is close to a weekend, they do a May the 4th be with you celebration.
Oh, they're already doing it. I already saw it. I'm like, I want to go, but I'm going to be out of town.
Yeah. And like,
I've been. It's so fun.
I'm so glad it's fun for people. I'm cool. I can't. And you know what it is? I think when people go hella hard for something, I'm always like, I don't need to. I'm good. Got enough fans.
Just need to paint some Star Wars paintings and you probably sell a lot.
That's how I make my money. Mario, I love it when you stop by, especially when you pick something that is so near and dear to my childhood and my formative years. And, I don't know if I should admit this out loud, but, it's movies like this that made me fall in love with the film industry.
I feel it.
Tell everybody where they can find you and support your work.
You can find me on Instagram at Movies with Mr. Mario, where I do reviews of TV shows and movies I'm watching and keeping up with the daily entertainment news.
I am firmly convinced that if you didn't grow up watching this movie, then you might not be into it at all. It is streaming on Disney Plus, so if you haven't seen it and you want to check it out, do so, and then let me know what you think. If you want more of this show, Pop Culture Makes Me Jealous, you can join us on Patreon. Over there, you get bonus episodes, bonus content, essays, reviews, all kinds of stuff, and a bi-monthly happy social hour where we discuss current pop culture highlights. To learn more, you can head over to patreon.com/Julia Washington and join the studio audience tier. I want to thank Mario for coming back and having this chat with me. You can find him on Instagram at Movies with Mr. Mario. That's at Movies with MR Mario. Friends, thanks for tuning in. Until next time.